I met a man in the dark web, he ruined my life. From author David Stelzl. Since the news has been full of reports about this epidemic that has broken out, about monsters running around and governments collapsing, I have been worried. So far our country has been spared from it and supposedly nothing, and no one is coming across the border. But I don't trust the suits. Sooner or later, everything will go down the drain here too. So I had a plan. Buy supplies, buy some guns, ammunition, and a small hut in the mountains. Then I couldn't give a shit what those spiders and the undead did to the fools around here. I just needed a little cash. A few thousand would have to do. And thanks to a documentary on YouTube, I now know where to get it. I'm gonna sell my old lady on the dark web. She was useless anyway. She couldn't cook, she was no good in bed, and she was always crying. She needed her daily rubdown with the belt so that she would finally shut up. The instructions on how to get into the dark web were quite understandable. It only took me a day and I had access to the darkest corners of the internet. Even for a hard-boiled guy like me, it was intense to see what was on offer there on various sites. You could even order human flesh. For a whole lot of dough. If you felt like it, you could even order a guy to come to your house and eat a part of yourself. A foot or an arm. What sick stuff. Thanks to the documentary, I already knew the name of the site I was looking for and quickly found it. Here you could now set up your own auction. It was quite simple, like on eBay. You had to enter the exact measurements, gender, hair color and age of the person and then wait for offers. I came into the kitchen after posting the bid, because it was 6:01 p.m. Time for dinner. I couldn't believe that the food wasn't on the table yet. The old lady was still in the kitchen. I was getting tired of it. Without saying anything, I went to her. She was about to come up with some excuse when I grabbed her hand and plunged it into the pot of boiling water and spaghetti. She screamed and moaned until I smacked her. Then I went out to get a burger. The pot and all the spaghetti were on the floor when I left, and I really hoped for the old lady's sake that the mess would be cleaned up when I got home. And sure enough, it was all tidied up. I only saw that out of the corner of my eye, because I went straight to my study. Curiosity to see if anyone had responded to my offer yet got the better of me. I booted up the laptop and logged in. Immediately, the latest bid caught my eye. Mr. Peace 69 offered me $20,000 for the old lady. Wow. Luckily, I had the option to accept the bid immediately instead of waiting for the auction to end. I was now $20,000 richer, baby. In the checkout process, I wrote that I would like the money in cash and asked the buyer for a suitable drop-off location. I was to come to a disused quarry about 70 kilometers from here tomorrow night at 10 p.m. To be on the safe side, I looked at the route beforehand and saw that I could easily reach the quarry via remote country roads. That was perfect. When the time came the next evening, my adrenaline level rose dramatically. I had done things against the law before, but not like this. Marie, that was the old woman's name, suspected nothing. Without warning, I slapped her pretty young face and tied her up. So that she couldn't scream, I stuffed my worn underwear into her mouth. Then I hoisted her onto the back of my old Ford Ranger and covered her with a tarp. The drive was quiet, I didn't even meet another road user on the way. The quarry was also deserted and I drove slowly down the winding road. The others were more than half an hour late. But so what? I'm happy to wait 30 minutes for $20,000. I was a bit surprised that they only came in a small car. At the wheel was a guy with a hood. A huge guy with a paper bag on his head squeezed out of the small car. He was wearing a jumper and underneath something like a nurse's costume. I didn't know if this was some kind of sick game for him or if it was customary for people to dress up for handovers like this. The muscle man came over to me and threw a doctor's bag at my feet. I could see in the spotlight that it was filled with bundles of money. My heart was pounding with joy. Since the huge nurse didn't say anything, I took off the tarp and pointed at Marie, who seemed panic-stricken. From the looks of those guys, she should have them too. Surprisingly gently, he grabbed her on the shoulder, walked over with her and took off her shackles. They were out of their minds after all. As I quickly got into my car and drove away, I could still see the old woman sitting down on the back seat. Well, I wished her a good time. Over the next few days, I started to buy my supplies. I was putting all the tinned food into a box when there was a knock at the door. It made me a little uneasy. Usually there was never a knock on my door. Fortunately, I had already got myself an operational Glock 29, which I now drew as I went to the door. I opened it and saw that Marie was lying outside my door. There was no one else to be seen. At first I thought she was dead, but then I noticed that her chest was rising and falling. But her eyes, they seemed so fixed. I dragged the old woman inside. We didn't have any direct neighbors, but no one had to know. She didn't say a word. Somehow she was drugged. Shit, man. Our government and legal system was still intact, so I couldn't give her a chance to talk to anyone. Without much thought, I shipped her ass off to the big basement. I had no idea what to do with her. I don't know why, but I set out some bread and a bottle of water for her. Maybe I felt guilty. The next day I went to check on her again. She hadn't touched the bread and water, but she was more awake now. She was sitting against the wall and eating something. The light was broken, so I had to get my torch. When the light beam hit her, I saw that she had caught a rat and was eating it. It just bit her in the back and tore muscles, tendons and also parts of the spine out of the poor animal with its mouth. Blood was spurting. I couldn't watch it, went back upstairs and locked the door again. For the next 2 days, I thought about what to do with her. Over and over again, only one solution came to mind. I had to kill her. Even though I had repeatedly beaten, humiliated, and perhaps tortured her over the past few years, I felt sorry for her now. Seeing what she had become made me feel guilty. And I didn't need that now. So I took my Glock and went down to the cellar with my torch. Her body would probably never be found. In a few weeks, when the apocalypse breaks out here in the country too, no one will have time to look for her. Poor thing. The cellar smelled awful. It must have been the decomposing rat. It was no longer in the place where Marie had been sitting before. Maybe it was hiding from me. There were a few water boxes in the back corner. There was enough room for her behind them. Slowly and carefully, I went to the boxes and around them. I didn't find Marie there. But parts of her. Her long blonde hair, her teeth, blood and fingernails were everywhere. What the hell had happened to her? Then, when I heard the loud breathing behind me, I remembered something. Just like that, it started in the other places. Relatives changed, withdrew. At some point, they found a cocoon that was empty, because the spider was already hunting prey. But there was no cocoon here. Slowly, I turned around and looked into her hungry, huge brown eyes. She was something else. With her long snout, pointed teeth, and powerful paws, she looked like a wolf. Her naked body was no longer as pretty as it used to be. She had these bristly black hairs everywhere. As quickly as I could, I raised my gun and fired, but she knocked it out of my hand with her paw. Then she grabbed me and bit my neck. Then she bit my face. I could smell her fetid breath as she tore at my cheeks. She tore my stomach and chest with her claws. I could even see my intestines. But then she stopped. As if it was some kind of instinct. She looked down at me and left the cellar. She would go hunting, I knew that now. I thought I was going to die now, but I didn't. I was just changing. It hurt so much. Like my stories? Then subscribe to my channel, like the video and click here for the next one.